Every week, we go through our top 5 pieces best performing content and our worst 5. The last meeting last week, we had a cat hammock that you stick to your window. It was one of the top performing pieces of content. 3 is a magic number. You get them past 3, they get super sticky. You still got to have your value proposition somewhere connected to the message. Because it's really easy, as you say, just to create cute pictures of dogs and cats, but you've got to try and find a meaning for that or a purpose for that, not just impressions or not just shares.
Welcome to Add to Cart, Australia's leading e-commerce podcast that express delivers all you need to know in the fast-moving world of online retail. Here's your host, Bushy.
Welcome to another episode of Add to Cart. I'm Bushy and I'm joining you from the land of the Turrbal people, otherwise known as Brisbane, Australia. On Add to Cart, we welcome everyone to share and listen to e-commerce stories. The more diverse, the better. I want to especially welcome the traditional owners and the original storytellers of the land that we are on, our Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander listeners, to join us in our e-commerce conversations and our community. Yes, here we are again, and it is a Wednesday. We are really spoiling you with these bonus eps lately. This one coming up today was recorded live at the Mumbrella Retail Summit. It was a fantastic day filled with great speakers, and I was lucky enough to take the stage for a live podcast. And this podcast was about one of the most challenging relationships in my life. It's about pets. I've got a cat. Its name's Tony. My wife got it and I got to name it, so I called it Tony. And he lives in a dedicated bathroom in our house. He is definitely the most pampered. And someone who knows a lot about pampered pets is today's guest. Jon Wild is the Chief Growth and Marketing Officer at Pet Circle. Started in 2011, the company opened its e-commerce doors 3 years later and now lists 13,500 SKUs, the largest offering of online pet products in Australia. In this chat, Jon shares all the tips around successful content creation, how to get the stickiest customers, and the unique way millennials and Zoomers parent their fur babies. Make sure you stay tuned because we do go off track a little bit talking about everything from charcuterie boards for pets all the way through to Ozempic for pets. Don't ask me how we got there, but we did. Great chat. But also, if you are the parent to a very special pet, make sure you stay right until the end because Jon has a very special offer for our listeners. Stay tuned until the end to get that. Let's get into it. Thanks to the Mumbrella Retail Marketing Summit, here is our conversation with Jon Wild, Chief Growth and Marketing Officer at Pet Circle. All right, Jon, we are here to talk all about driving performance outcomes, and I did a little bit of research before we had our chat today. And I think it could be a very short chat because one of the things that I came across feels like you've just nailed this straight away. Charcuterie boards. Tell us about charcuterie boards.
But look, I mean, our category is a fun category, right? I mean, all of those who know you have a pet, they just change the tone of the day, change the tone. You know, when you see your dog running around the park, it just makes you happy. And so we've got to find ways to actually try and create those happy moments to sort of refract our brand. The charcuterie boards, we love a pun. So obviously, you know, when we get a pun, we get one in. But actually, it's probably part of a deeper thought process for us in the sense that there's some research that came out from the Animal Bond Institute in the US that says if you have a pet, you are 2/3 more likely to be happier than someone who doesn't, 50% calmer, 50% more connected to the community, and actually 9% healthier. And that's diagnostically healthier. So pets have a profound impact on our lives. So what then that says to us is we should spend more time with our pets. So a restaurant is a place where we think you should bring a pet. Similarly, Virgin came out the other day, if you didn't see it, and said that you can start, they're trying to petition to get pets on planes. We are big supporters of that. In fact, we think planes, trains, automobiles, restaurants, retail, we think pets should be part of our communities. So it's a fun way of connecting to what I think is a broader message that pets make our lives happier.
Are you putting your hand up to be the in-flight meal service of pets?
Absolutely.
What an opportunity.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
But I think this kind of thinking really sets your brand apart. And from what I've seen, you aren't a stranger to taking a path that other retailers are taking. This summer, you did a campaign called
get the F out. And it was plastered on buses and outdoor. It was everywhere. It caught the eye.
Yeah. I mean, look, so we built our business largely on harvesting demand at the bottom of the funnel, which we'll talk about a bit later. But what we realized is you need to also build a brand. You can't, that doesn't run forever. So we are now intentionally pushing money back up the funnel to try and create a brand. And then as a challenger, we need to be a bit disruptive. So, and again, we're probably still finding our voice and finding our tone, but within that, GTFO felt like a call to action. You know, for us, it was obviously get the fur babies out, not the other meaning. And I'd spent a bit of time learning the vernacular of the Zoomers and the millennials in the office. But so it's get the fur babies out. And with our product or our D2C experience means you don't have to go to a retail store. Your product comes to your door, and you get to spend more time with your fur babies. So there's a bit of a play on that. And we also, I guess, the other piece is, a large portion of the market is now millennials and Zoomers. They're coming in, and we need to find ways to sort of relate to them.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a play on all those sort of areas.
Marketers, your time is now. Emarsys is on a mission to give power to the marketer. With Emarsys, they want you to wield the ultimate marketing power. Emarsys is an omni-channel customer engagement platform that connects more native channels than any other vendor in the market. Say farewell to one-size-fits-all campaigns. Emarsys empowers you with personalised, data-driven strategies that captivate your audience and boost your bottom line. Just ask Adore Beauty, Pet Circle, Total Tools and City Beach. They've experienced firsthand the game-changing impact of Emarsys on their marketing efforts. Seize the reins of your marketing destiny today. Embrace Emarsys and watch your business soar to new heights. Visit Emarsys, that's EMARSYS, emarsys.com now.
So you're bucking a few trends there because you're a D2C brand going after the younger audience. I'm assuming you've got a shed load of data sitting there. The obvious choice would be to go really personalized, really programmatic, data-driven marketing, but instead you're plastering it up for the masses.
Yeah.
How do you validate that?
Yeah, well, as I said, like we built the business on sort of the programmatic foundation. And I'm going to sort of talk a little bit about that because, you know, I think like marketing is a big cost line in a P&L. Like, you know, typically a D2C brand can be as high as 30, but most businesses are at maybe between 5 and 10. It's a big line. And marketing had not done a good job of trying to explain the return on investment. Digital marketing sort of became in vogue, and what it did is it created deterministic ways to get a return on investment of your return on investment. Now, I believe that's flawed, and I believe it created a flawed kind of perspective. But it was one that the CFO, for example, could put in a spreadsheet and create an outcome. You know, you spend this much, you acquire customers at this, you generate this much revenue. So albeit flawed truth, it was better than the vacuum that marketers have created. So I think that is it's a really interesting sort of bind that people are now trying to work through. And I use this example. Imagine waking up in the morning and the radio hearing a Coke ad, going online, seeing a YouTube Coke ad, driving down the road, seeing an out-of-home ad, then going to a convenience store and there's a post-mix Coke display, and that gets all the attribution, or that gets all the credit. Well, digital marketing is sort of that, has done that. And so people have rushed or massively sort of pushed their investments into that area. And what we're realizing is that the pond begins to get a little bit shallow. A few years ago, I went over to the US to run marketing for Groupon. It's the first year that they'd had negative growth in customers. And we were spending $100 million on search, $100 million in Meta, and about $100 million on coupons. And yet our customer growth was negative. And this is a sort of a feature of digital, is that you start circling the bottom of the funnel. You start circling the same customers. You're not acquiring new customers. And so what you have to break that. And so what you need to do is you then need to start reaching new customers. You need to start exposing new customers to your brand and your message. And actually, the traditional mediums are often more successful in that than the digital mediums.
We heard the team from IKEA this morning. I'm not sure if you were in that conversation or not, but they were talking about being able to have a media mix model where they can basically plug in what they think they're going to invest and it'll spit out a rough return.
Yeah.
And I could imagine you would have had a similar model of that with your programmatic spend over all the years. How do you then go from having that kind of certainty to an outcome to then going above the line.
Yeah, and going to probabilistic models, which don't give you a definitive answer. It says, it gives you a sort of a range to work within. In fact, that was how I got Groupon to invest in traditional media. Is we went in with a media mix model, ran it against the attribution models that we were working, and then you got a rough sense of kind of you've got to index them both. One of the things that we saw immediately was search was 2/3 less incremental than what our digital attribution models were telling us. So we ran that for 3 months, and that gave us the confidence to then start punting money up the funnel into reach. Literally just, it's really odd, the world's cyclical, going back to basically incremental reach because we realised we had to expose more customers to our message.
Yeah. And I love that philosophy around going where the competition or the other players aren't. Are there other channels that you've got your eye on at the moment that you're like, I'd really like to explore that area because I think that's untapped at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting challenge for me. So I worked in traditional brands and then really got to understand Google, but all of the sort of the social media networks and I'm going to talk about TikTok are over my head. I don't TikTok, believe it or not. But I realise now that medium, I think, or that type of medium is going to be incredibly powerful. If we look at our customers, so we're getting more and more millennials, more and more sort of Zoomers coming into our populations. They don't go to the vet. They go to the vet less than once a year. So there is a dearth of information for those consumers. And we believe knowledge is a really important, is something that we want to bring to the market. When you provide knowledge to customers, they invest in nutrition, they invest in their pet welfare. And so, I can see, in fact, we're exploring this at the moment where we try and create snackable pieces of content that are providing sort of advice through entertainment, sort of edutainment, if you like. And so I think that channel and maybe this idea of creating a spokesperson that helps educate these new consumers coming into our category on how to look after the pet, things to watch for and providing advice, but obviously in a sort of entertaining fashion, I think is something really exciting. I could see it becoming a core way for us to translate. We have 30 vets on staff, a core way to translate their knowledge, but to the masses rather than one-to-one.
I could imagine that when you're dealing with cats and dogs and all sorts of cute things, that creating content and content ideas wouldn't be overly difficult. And we heard Pippa this morning from the checkout saying that essentially there's lots of shit content out there. It's easy to create content, but it's hard to create good content. How do you then go, there's all this opportunity for us to create content without spinning up a team of 100 people creating content? How do you know where to focus?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, anyone remember pets.com? They were great at creating content. They had so many impressions, but they couldn't translate it into revenue or a business. So they fell by the wayside. So it's really interesting. The first thing we've done is we've built our own studio because I think content's trial and error. I think you've got to iterate a lot. Something will stick and then you learn a formula, you learn a template, and then you sort of move forward. So I think for us anyway, the immediate transition was let's take it out of an agency, take it in-house, because I think there's a lot of iteration and cycling that you need to do to get to that right point. And even now, we're still trying to create that balance between sort of this entertainment factor and then and things that then draw people into our brand and so they become consumers. An example, like we look at actually every week, we go through our top 5 pieces, best performing content, and our worst 5. So the last meeting last week, we had a cat hammock that you stick to your window was one of the top performing pieces of content. So you've got to, I think it's one of those things. It's you got to play with it for a while, and every now and again you'll get something that just seems to resonate. And so we're getting better at if you think about it, we were here. It's not good for a podcast, but if we were wide before, we're getting narrower and narrower and understanding what are the things that really get people to engage and then move into becoming a customer.
Looking to grow your business on TikTok? Introducing TikTok ads. With TikTok Ads Manager, the possibilities for your business are endless. Reach over 1 billion active users across the globe, unleash your creativity with their range of advertising solutions, and stay on top of your campaign's performance. Join the 8.5 million Aussies who are on TikTok every month, alongside over 350,000 Aussie businesses already thriving. Whether you want to increase brand awareness, drive sales, or connect with your audience, TikTok Ads Manager has got you covered. Ready to take your business to the next level? Try TikTok Ads Manager today and watch your business grow on TikTok.
Are there common themes? Is it novelty? Is it eye-catching?
Yeah, I think novelty products definitely a stream that goes really well. Testimonials, like people like hearing from other like-minded pet parents. There's a few other areas that we're starting to iterate with, but it's important that what you can't do, and we're probably guilty of this in some forms, is you still got to have kind of your value proposition somewhere connected to the message. Because it's really easy, as you say, just to create cute pictures of dogs and cats. That's really easy, but you've got to try and find a meaning for that or a purpose for that, not just impressions or not just shares, for example.
Yeah. And when you talk about your customer proposition, how do you define that?
We define it across 5 dimensions, and then we start playing around with our kind of investment profiles across those dimensions. So, you got price or value, service, delivery, and great products. Yeah. So that, and we're flexing across those. In fact, we actually just spend a large part of time thinking about where are we investing, what resonates. Obviously you've got cost of living pressures. We've really lent into service at this stage in terms of the consumer profile. Are they thinking about service, or are they now really thinking about value? Do we need to shift some of those investments? But, I think part of that conversation is we see these as all brand investments. And so it's part of a broader envelope of investment that you then got to find ways to flex into the areas that you think you're going to get the most outcome or the best outcome for.
Seems to be paying off, because I was having a look through the customer reviews on Trustpilot as well as some other platforms, and you generally have customers who are raving fans.
Yeah, we get some stinkers too, but because our pet parents are passionate, right? Like we're privileged to participate in this kind of unconditional bond of love that pet parents and pets have. But when we messed it up, they let us know. We as a team go through every month a deep dive on CS and the customer insights or customer feedback they get. We spend a little bit of time on the best, tap ourselves on the back, but then we spend a lot of time on the worst. We go through each one in detail. Like, say you get a bad delivery one. Where was it? What's the driver? Why did it happen? And we try and go deep, because I think the risk is we've got a lot of data, like more than you can imagine, and often it obfuscates the real truth. I'll give you an example. In a certain suburb, delivery, all our metrics was humming. So we had really efficient, best drops, but we were getting bad feedback. And what was happening is drivers rolling through and chucking the parcels into the, over the fence effectively.
Which is bad if the dog's in the yard as well.
Yeah, exactly. But in the metrics, things look great. Yeah. But customers were telling us not so good. And so we find that feedback super rich. Typically, honestly, drives most of our investment profile as well. We'll look at that. We'll try and group it together. And once we see a pattern, that'll typically be where we invest.
And do you tie back those raving fans to customer lifetime value?
We do. So this is probably the metric that we obsess about the most. LTV and then paybacks is the sort of counter mark to that. So essentially, how much value does a customer generate in 2 years? And let's say I'm acquiring them. How fast does that payback occur? We do the same things on things like we're building a warehouse. We will look at the paybacks of that particular investment. So how long, in terms of the incremental value it generates before it pays back in terms of the cost. And I like LTV as well, because a lot of marketers in my space are focused on CACs and CPAs. That makes you think about transaction one and one only. Whereas LTV makes you think about a relationship with a customer and actually makes you think more about transactions 2, 3, 4. And it means then you've got to build great experiences, because most of us can get a customer once, right? Cheap price, whatever, like some gimmicky way. But to get them to come back 2, 3 times is actually a lot more difficult. And for us, actually, a lot of businesses I've worked in, it's one of those funny things. 3 is a magic number. You get them past 3, they get super sticky. Like attrition goes from like halves for us as soon as you get them into that fourth transaction. It's really important. And LTV helps you shape that thinking.
Are there any tactics you've put in place, either at Pet Circle or other organisations, to help go from that first shop to that third shop to kind of re-engage?
Look, many. Everything from, a basic, $10 off your next order. So you just try and pull them through promotion. I don't love it, but it does work. Better to do that than spend your money on trying to reacquire them sort of after 8 or 9 months when they've lapsed. We try and use a lot of knowledge and education. Again, we believe we have a role beyond just an e-commerce provider, in that educating consumers is at the heart of trying to improving pets' lives. So we have a service. We have 30 vets on staff. They're free to contact. So we will try and push that one quite heavily. Come talk to a vet. We have this thing called a vet pet plan, which is sort of like a lifestyle guide for you and your pet. So it'll talk about nutrition, you know, if you're at work a lot, you know, occupy toys when they're at home, that sort of stuff. So trying to fill in that space between clinical vet visits and that whole, you know, healthy, you know, health and well-being kind of space that is big in humans. And one thing we know is that pets will follow humans constantly. Like this, we're sort of like they're 5 or 6 years behind what's happening in the human world. And a great example, we're talking about this a lot, is obesity is a big thing at pets at the moment. In fact, I was joking that, you know, we'll see pet Ozempic before we know it. But it's a problem now. Like we're feeding them too much. And it's literally a corollary of what's happening in the human space.
I had another question, but you've taken me off another train of thought with pet Ozempic. I'm going to pull us back to where I was going. Is it time critical? So if we get that first purchase in, there is often a sensitivity, or even from a retailer's side, a hesitation to kind of go, come back again. Let's go again. Is there a time sensitivity to re-engaging?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So the first thing to mention, we've got sort of two sides to our business. You've got the consumable side and the discretionary side. So the consumable side is actually quite easy, because if I buy a 2 kilo bag of food, we know when that's going to run out roughly based on dog size and things like that. So we'll have a replenishment campaign that will go out to prompt the next purchase. Or we have a product called order delivery, which is even better, which they just set up and then it's like a magic porridge pot. It keeps coming to their door every few weeks. So yes, we look at product, and then, you know, if they buy a 20 kilo bag, then obviously that communication doesn't go out for another 6 weeks. Yep. So we try and help the customer by prompting about replenishment. Flea and worming is another one that's easy on replenishment. You know, you buy 6 months worth of flea and worming, we're going to talk to you 5 months out. Yep. Discretionary is a little harder. You know, you buy a bed, it doesn't really tell you as much, but what we'll lean into is things like food and advice to try and then get them into a nutrition or a food-based solution.
So try and shift categories.
Yeah. So and again, it's another indicator of LTV. If you get to three, again, it's weird. Three categories, super sticky. If I can get you buying, I know, a bed, food, and flea and worming, super sticky customer, high LTV.
Okay. And have you got automation set up for all of those that you mentioned?
Yeah. We invested in a stack about 4 years ago. It's all about the data at the back end, right? So we're actually investing quite a lot in our own CDP, and we see it as two things that we've got to fix, right? So the first is getting customer pet data.
Yep.
And it's an interesting thing. Is our customer the customer or the pet? It's an existential question we ask ourselves quite often.
What's the answer?
We think pet, believe it or not, but we think having the details of the pet's way more important than having the details of the customer. You know, so like I'd much rather know you have a Jack Russell than you say live in Vaucluse, for example. So that's super important to us. But then the other piece is then tagging your product category, which is actually really, really interesting. So we're going through our vets and we're taking, so let's say Jack Russells have skin and sensitive stomach issues. We then go across all of our food and we say which across all of our nutritional products are good for sensitive stomachs or skin. And then you can sort of start seeing, okay, so when a customer comes on board, we've mapped our products and our customers, vets, to create a more personalised experience. And we're organised now by products. This is sort of our future state. So we're organised in a way most companies organise themselves. So it's almost like an outside-in view, inside-out view. So, you know, we've got a food team, we've got a flea and worming team, we've got a toy team. And so lo and behold, that's how we organise our site. We actually think the way shoppers will shop in the future is around breed. So if I'm a Jack Russell, which I've got a Jack Russell, you haven't figured it out, or Foxy Terrier, but it's better for me to actually just go to a place where I've got all the stuff that's appropriate for Jack Russell. So occupy toys, you know, a bed that actually has a cover because they like burrowing, so they like sleeping under a cover. Yeah. And all the food that's appropriate for them, rather than me going in and going, I've got to go through food, get to the bottom of the checkout, come back to the top. What's the bed? I've got to go back. So if you like food and category, it's almost like a vertical, and then you've got to add these horizontal or orthogonal ways to kind of find the products you need. And I think that when we get that right, I think that's going to be a really powerful way of engaging with our consumers, increasing the number of categories they buy and all those sort of things that drive LTV.
Yeah. And do you think customers recognise that they're being personalised too, and do they value it enough that you can not be so price sensitive that they come back for that ease and convenience? They go, I know I'll just get it done, and I'm happy to pay a little bit more for that?
I mean, and again, you talk about you get into these conversations. You don't want to be too spooky. You don't want to know. But I think, yes, you do it. But I also think you just make it. You surface it in your navigation structures as well. So like that, the customer can sort of, you can either push that content to the customer, or they can go select it and pull it. So I think you've got to work both ways. And then, like, any e-commerce site, you then have a bunch of widgets that once you know once you've got the customer information, then you can obviously publish content that's appropriate for them in those widgets.
You have to start collecting dog weights now.
We had this discussion. We will not immediately. But I think eventually we do want to get weight, because I think, as Ed, we think this is going to be the next. Unfortunately, the next sort of epidemic with pets is going to be obesity.
Wow. So Pet Circle, amazing growth, and you mentioned that what you've got your eye on, and some of the above the line experimentation. What else is on your radar for 2024 from a marketing perspective?
Yeah, build brand. So figuring out how to find that connection between, and this is the challenge actually, between all those beautiful images and fun and actually the brand. Somewhere in there, education needs to be the kind of connector. We're debating this at the moment around value. So like, do we need to start thinking about reacting to the cost of living pressures? Although we do find that in our category that is super inelastic. People will compromise their own nutrition before they compromise their pets. So we do have that luxury, but we still want to, there's still, I think, a responsibility in terms of perhaps reacting to some of the pressures out there. And then probably range. Like we want to take all this data that we've got, and in an ideal world, we want to be able to present to a customer everything they need for their specific circumstances. So breed is core, but there'll be other things, your lifestyle, you at home or away, that will dictate some of the kind of product selections and those sort of things. So I think really scouring, we have an advantage. We're at D2C. We don't have fixed spaces and planograms. So we will scour the world, and we're going to find the best solutions for each of those sort of little micro connection points. So, like Jack Russell in nutrition, or Greyhound, coats, for example, or boots, that sort of thing. So we want to really connect those two things together in a really meaningful way.
Fascinating. Jon, that has absolutely flown. I love how we started up the top here talking about charcuterie boards for the masses, and we've ended up with knowing individual dog weights. So everyone give it up for Jon.
Thank you.
Now, if you're keen to go check out some of those 13,500 SKUs across the range and get something that is personalised for your special pet, Jon has given listeners 20% off your first Pet Circle order. Simply enter the code ATC20, that's ATC20, at checkout. Offers valid until the 30th of June. Terms and conditions apply. Here's the 3 lessons that I got from our conversation with Jon. Number 1. In-house content creation. Jon and his team have their own studio, and this allows them for trial and error. There is not a huge amount of pressure when they're briefing in creative to agencies or partners because they get one take at it. By having their own studio, they're able to take their time and work out what's happening and iterate. So if content is key for you, it is worth working out how you can bring that in-house for some of that lo-fi, always-on content. Number 2. 3 is the magic number. I was fascinated by this. Jon puts customer lifetime value commencing at the 3rd purchase. 1 is great for acquiring a new customer, 2 shows intent, but 3 is when he knows he has them. I bet that's a number a lot of retailers don't know. How many of your customers are 3+ times purchases? And number 3, snackable edutainment. In a world of pets, Jon and his team could be posting about everything all of the time. There is so much content when it comes to pets, but their guide around edutainment, it actually has to deliver the audience something of value in an entertaining way, is a great guidepost for them. So make sure you've got those guideposts in play for your content strategy too. Thanks for joining us today on Add to Cart. To listen to all our e-commerce conversations, now in the hundreds, you can head on over to addtocart.com.au. There, you can also join up to our free private Slack community to share e-commerce ideas, tips, and questions with other listeners. You can also subscribe to the Add to Cart weekly newsletter and browse some of the video highlights from our chats. There is a lot there. That's addtocart.com.au. And if I can ask you one thing before you go, if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you share it with a friend or a colleague who could benefit, or leave us a review. It really makes a difference. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep those customers adding to cart.